have summoned me on behalf of millions of your fellow Americans to lead a great crusade.
I am a soldier. I belong to the Army. And the Army is truly national. It lives to serve the nation and nobody else.
No one wants another Pearl Harbor. This means that we must have knowledge of military forces and preparations around the world.
As of today, the overall military strength of the free world is distinctly greater than that of the communist countries.
Dwight David Eisenhower, America's 34th president, served from 1953 to 1961. He rode into office as a victorious general during World War II, but with over 30 years in the Army, he was remarkably unmilitary as president. Dwight Eisenhower faced many hard decisions during his presidency: how to deal with communism, disputes over civil rights, and a series of international crises. But this war hero turned out to be a champion of peace, an organized, thoughtful, and patient chief executive who most people simply called Ike. Hi, I'm Kelby Coffert at the Dwight D. Eisenhower Library and Museum in Abilene, Kansas. Dwight D. Eisenhower, who is actually named David Dwight Eisenhower, was born in Denison, Texas on October 14, 1890. His parents, David Jacob Eisenhower and Ida Stover, were deeply religious people who belonged to a peace-loving religious sect called the River Brethren. When Eisenhower was a baby, he and his family moved from Denison to Abilene, Kansas, where his father worked in a creamery. In school, Dwight was popular with his classmates, who gave him the nickname Little Ike to tell him apart from his 5 brothers. After high school, Ike got a full-time job at the creamery where his father worked. He wasn't interested in going on to college at first until a friend urged him to apply to the National Military Academies, where his tuition would be paid for by the government. Luck was with Ike when he was invited to attend the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. His decision to join the Army was not an easy one, since his parents were pacifists who were opposed to war. At West Point, Ike played on the football team, but a knee injury forced him to quit the team early. In 1915, he graduated the academy with high grades, 61st in a class of 164. At the time, the military assigned their new second lieutenant to Fort Sam Houston near San Antonio, Texas. There, he met Mamie Geneva Dowd, a visitor from Denver. Not long after, on July 1, 1916, on the very day he was promoted to first lieutenant, he and Mamie Dowd were married. Ike and Mamie had a son, Dowd, who died of scarlet fever at the age of 3. Their second son, John, would grow up to be an Army officer and a diplomat. Like most military families, the Eisenhowers moved from one Army post to another. During World War I, Ike directed tank training near Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, then served on the staff of Brigadier General Fox Connor in the Panama Canal Zone. Later, he attended the Army's Leadership Factory at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. By 1933, he had risen in the ranks to become an aide to General Douglas MacArthur, the Army's Chief of Staff. In 1940, the United States began to build up its military forces to fight in World War II. Ike was assigned to direct tank training with General George S. Patton, Jr., a friend and respected tank commander.
Yesterday, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
After Japan attacked the United States at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, in December of 1941, Ike was assigned to Washington, D.C., where he helped plan America's war battles. He was promoted to the rank of Major General in March of 1942. Just 3 months later, he was named Commanding General of U.S. forces in Europe.
General Eisenhower, the newly appointed American C&C Europe, takes office in London on the establishment of a European theater of operations for the United States forces. The general is a 51-year-old.
By February of 1943, he was a 4-star general, the highest rank in the Army. General Eisenhower was best known as the supreme commander of the Allied troops that invaded France on the beaches of Normandy on what is now called D-Day.
The Supreme Commander, General Eisenhower, holds an early conference with General Montgomery, the commander of English ground troops, and they see that all operations go according to plan.
The Battle of D-Day began in the early morning hours of June 6, 1944, as Eisenhower's soldiers stormed beaches that were heavily guarded by German troops. By nightfall, Ike's soldiers had a firm hold on the beaches, the beginning of 11 months of bloody fighting that ended on May 7, 1945, when the German army surrendered.
Out of the fog and smoke of the Western Front and the partial blackout of news, peace rumors sweep America as the amazing drive to Berlin races ahead. With every day, every hour, the borders of the Reich shrink back.
For his military success on D-Day, Eisenhower was given the newly created rank of 5-star general, the highest rank any military leader could ever achieve.
A Kansas farm boy comes home. General Dwight D. Eisenhower meets his mother, 83-year-old Ida Stover Eisenhower. His 4 brothers and other members of the Supreme Commander's family join the welcome as General Eisenhower returns to the small Midwestern town where he spent his childhood.
After the war, Ike retired from the Army and became president of Columbia University in New York City. His popularity as a war hero made him a logical political candidate. Representatives from both Republican and Democratic parties approached him to run for president. At first, he refused. He did not think it was proper for a professional soldier to become a politician.
I have consistently declined to consider such a contingency. I am a soldier. I belong to the Army. And the Army is truly national. It lives to serve the nation and nobody else, no party, no special group.
But at the 1952 Republican National Convention in Chicago, Ike won the nomination as the party's presidential candidate.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have summoned me on behalf of millions of your fellow Americans to lead a great crusade for freedom in America and freedom in the world. I know something of the solemn responsibility of leading a crusade. I have led one.
He chose California Senator Richard M. Nixon as his vice presidential running mate. The Democrats nominated Governor Adlai E. Stevenson of Illinois for president and Senator John J. Sparkman of Alabama for vice president.
Tonight, the campaign song for the next president of the United States.
I like Ike, I'll shout it over a mic. Tried and true, courageous, strong, and human. Why, even Harry Truman says I like Ike. Come on now!
Eisenhower and Nixon easily won the election, with 55% of the ballots cast. When he entered the White House in January of 1953, President Eisenhower faced a world that was quickly changing after a devastating World War. As he had done in the military, he delegated a lot of his presidential powers to his staff, which he chose for their ability to carry out his orders. The Eisenhower's years in the White House were the longest time that Ike and Mamie had ever lived in one place. Golf was the president's favorite recreation, and he often practiced right on the White House lawn. He also liked to cook and would broil steaks on a charcoal grill up on the White House roof. In domestic affairs, President Eisenhower gave the nation's tax system a thorough overhaul, broadened the Social Security system, and increased the minimum wage to $1 an hour. He also established the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. In spite of his desire to cut the cost of government, he also approved several multi-billion-dollar public works programs. One was the St. Lawrence Seaway, a waterway that opened the Great Lakes to ocean ships. Another was the Interstate Highway System, which began in 1956. In foreign policy, he emphasized close cooperation with America's allies and appointed John Foster Dulles, Secretary of State, to carry out his policy. In 1956, French, British, and Israeli troops attacked Egypt in an effort to regain control of the Suez Canal, an important waterway to the oil-rich Middle East. Eisenhower moved quickly to defuse the situation, arranging for United Nations peacekeeping troops to replace the invading armies.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
The space age officially began on October 4, 1957, when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the world's first artificial satellite.
Today, a new moon is in the sky, a 23-inch metal sphere placed in orbit by a Russian rocket.
Fearing that the Soviet Union might have long-range missiles powerful enough to reach North America, Eisenhower quickly started the space race, an all-out effort to catch up to the Soviets in space technology.
It is my conviction, supported by trusted scientific and military advisors, that although the Soviets are quite likely ahead in some missile and special areas, and are obviously ahead of us in satellite development, as of today, the overall military strength of the free world is distinctly greater than that of the communist countries.
On January 31st, 1958, the United States put its first satellite, Explorer 1, into orbit.
You've been a great, great five-star leader, and we're so proud we've been working with you. You traveled far to build a friendlier world of 50.
But early in his second term, crisis in the Middle East and Asia troubled Eisenhower's administration. In July of 1958, he had to send troops to Lebanon to protect United States oil interests in the Mediterranean region. 1 month later, China began bombing the nearby islands of Quemoy and Matsu. The president ordered the U.S. Navy to help end the serious threat to peace in that region. Then, in May of 1960, came the U-2 incident. Just as Ike and the new Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev were meeting in Paris, France, the Soviets shot down an American U-2 spy plane flying over Russia. Khrushchev demanded a U.S. apology for invading its airspace. Eisenhower refused, and Khrushchev walked out of their meeting.
My good friends and fellow citizens, no one wants another Pearl Harbor. This means that we must have knowledge of military forces and preparations around the world, especially those capable of massive surprise attacks.
Then, near the end of Eisenhower's second term, Fidel Castro became the communist dictator of the island of Cuba, just 90 miles off the Florida coast. When Castro seized all property owned by U.S. companies in Cuba, Eisenhower broke off diplomatic relations with the island nation. The 22nd Amendment, which limits a president to only 2 full terms in office, became law in 1951, so Dwight Eisenhower became the first American president who could not run for a 3rd term.
Vice President Richard M. Nixon has been unanimously nominated to be the candidate of the Republican Party for the office of President of the United States.
In the 1960 election, the Republicans nominated Vice President Richard Nixon to succeed Eisenhower, but it was not to be. Nixon lost the election to his Democratic rival, Senator John F. Kennedy from Massachusetts, who became the 35th American president in January of 1961. When Eisenhower left the White House, he retired to a farm he had bought in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. There he raised cattle and wrote 3 books about his life in the military and as president. After a series of heart attacks, he died on March 28, 1969, and is today buried alongside his wife near the library in Abilene, Kansas, bearing his name. Dwight David Eisenhower, the 5-star general, became the greatest military hero of his age. He was also one of our greatest champions for peace, and after 2 successful terms, the nation's 34th president was as popular on the day he left office as he was on the day he was elected.